Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever wondered what exactly separates a casual throwaway remark from a truly persuasive, undeniable case? Well, today in this explainer, we're meticulously deconstructing the anatomy of an argument. We're going to map out the precise mechanics of how a powerful point of view is built, taking you straight from a basic statement all the way to absolute persuasion. To do that, here's our roadmap for the explainer. First, statement versus argument. Second, establishing your point. Third, the logical basement. Fourth, the trust basement. And finally, number 5, the belief basement. Section 1, statement versus argument. We spend most of our daily communication operating at a pretty surface level. Like, you might just say, hey, this is good. Now, as our source points out, that is merely a statement. It just kind of sits there. You can't really dismantle it or debate it because it literally has no structural parts. It's just a declaration. But we cross the exact threshold of persuasion by adding just 3 crucial words, because of this. Boom, now we have an argument. That because introduces a rationale. Suddenly, this pizza is good becomes this pizza is good because it uses authentic Neapolitan dough. You've connected a claim directly to a reason. You've given the listener something to hold on to, something to evaluate and potentially agree with. That simple because is really the spark of all persuasive communication. Section 2, establishing your point. So, we've crossed that initial threshold, right? We have an argument. But how do we actually establish a point of view that is genuinely strong? I mean, when you want someone to see the world exactly the way you do, a simple because is a great start, but it's not the whole shebang. Literally, anyone can throw a because at the end of a sentence. That doesn't make their point undeniable. We need to pivot from that surface level down into the deep structure to really give that argument some serious weight. To establish your point of view, you need factors. A robust point of view isn't just magically proclaimed into thin air. Think of your argument like building a house. These factors, they're the heavy concrete foundations poured deep into the ground. Without them, the house collapses the second the wind blows. If someone pushes back on your idea, and you don't have these underlying factors firmly in place, your argument just crumbles. You absolutely need an architecture that supports whatever it is you're trying to say. And this brilliantly illustrates what those structural factors actually are. Our source outlines 3 specific foundational levels, which it calls basements, that support any argument. We've got the logical basement, the trust basement, and the belief basement. Every persuasive point you make, or hear for that matter, is relying on one or more of these basements to hold it up. Without at least one of these firmly established, you really aren't persuading anyone. So let's explore exactly how each one functions to bear the weight of your ideas. Section 3, the logical basement. Let's move to and see how this builds. We are now officially beginning our descent into the first foundation of persuasion, which is pure logic. The source defines this using really straightforward mathematical steps. Step 1, A equals B. Step 2, B equals C. Step 3, so A equals C. This is the absolute bedrock of deductive reasoning. To put it simply, if A is working out and B is burning calories, and B, burning calories, equals C, losing weight, well then A, working out, equals C, losing weight, right? If you establish that your first premise connects to your second and your second connects to your conclusion, your audience's brain just naturally follows the path. It establishes this mechanical, irrefutable flow that makes your argument structurally sound. You're not asking the listener to take a huge leap of faith, you're simply walking them down a logical path where the conclusion is the only reasonable destination. Section 4, the trust basement. Now, logic alone isn't always going to cut it. People need more than just a slick equation. They need the trust basement. And that means you have to provide data that has been proven. If the logical basement is your invisible framework, trust is the verified, solid material you actually use to build it. Think about it. If you claim a new medicine works perfectly, logic just isn't enough. You need the trust basement of peer-reviewed clinical trials. You need statistics, historical facts, expert testimony. Without proven data, your audience simply has no reason to trust the variables you're using in your logical equation. The math might be flawless, but if the numbers are totally made up, the argument still falls apart. Trust provides that absolutely crucial reality check. Section 5, the belief basement. Now, we transition to the final, deeply human structural pillar. We've covered mechanical logic, we've covered hard data, but the belief basement taps into something else entirely. It's when you establish a shared belief that everyone holds to be true. Even with perfect logic and proven data, if you aren't tapping into a fundamental shared worldview, your argument might bounce right off your audience. Think about arguments built on the idea that say, freedom of speech is essential, or protecting our children is the highest priority. You don't need a math equation or a clinical trial for that, do you? You're relying on a shared moral baseline. You have to find that common ground where everyone can just agree on the core premise. When you anchor your argument in a universal human truth or a cultural touchstone, you bypass the critical, skeptical part of the brain and you speak directly to people's core values. The source text actually does something incredibly deliberate here. It repeats these exact three basements a second time. Why? Well, because grasping them is just that critical to mastering communication. We can't just nod along and forget them. We literally have to internalize them. So we're going to honor that repetition by running through a necessary final checklist for maximum retention. We're making sure these concepts are permanently cemented into your own communication toolkit. Now, what's really interesting about this master checklist is how the framework elegantly distills everything you need. The logical basement requires your A to B to C sequence. Trust requires proven data. Belief requires a shared consensus. So the real magic is how you combine them. Let's say you're pitching your company on switching to renewable energy. Your belief basement is the shared consensus that, we should protect the planet. Your trust basement is the data showing solar insulation costs have dropped by 80%, and your logical basement is the sequence solar energy is cheaper, reducing costs is better for a bottom line, therefore we should switch to solar. By hitting all three of these, your argument becomes an absolute fortress. Before you try to persuade anyone of anything important, mentally run your argument through this exact master checklist to see where your foundation might be cracking. That brings us to a close, but I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative question. Which basement do your own, most deeply held beliefs actually rest upon? Seriously, take a moment to think about the things you argue for most passionately, whether it's at work, at the dinner table, or online. Are they standing on a logical basement of deduction, a trust basement of hard facts, or a belief basement of shared values? Or hey, maybe you'll find some of your own arguments are just floating in the air without a basement at all. I challenge you to apply this framework to analyze your own communication going forward. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.